fellow Patriots. Welcome back to another episode. Welcome back to Patriots of the American Republic. In our last video, we reported a judge who stepped down after he was caught sheltering an illegal immigrant who allegedly had ties to Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. In that video, we showed the judge and the judge's daughter was allowing this individual to handle a firearm, which is a federal offense. It's illegal. One would think this judge, whose job is to uphold the law, would know better. Over the last few years, we have seen bureaucrats, elected officials, and judges conducting themselves in manners that arguably are illegal simply to go against Trump. Now, we previously reported former General Mark Milley, if I'm not mistaken, had allegedly advised China that he would warn them should Trump decide to attack them during Trump's first term, right? We've seen similar behaviors for mayors and governors declaring themselves as sanctuary cities in defiance to Trump's immigration policies. And we're seeing judges engaging in illegal activities, not to protect perhaps mothers and children from being deported, but helping hardened criminals to evade ICE agents and deportation. It's an insane world we live in when it comes to the left, but these actions are not the focal point of today's video. The focal point is actually how the media is covering all of this. Their manipulative tactics are very, very, how can I put it? They're very minute or subtle. They're very subtle, and yet they carry so much impact. So, in our last video, or in our last episode, we showed a video of Stephen Miller. He gave us a clear example of kind of the things that we're going to look at. We covered the deportation of Kilmore Abrego Garcia, alleged MS-13 gang member, alleged human trafficker, alleged wife beater. In that episode, we showed how the media jumped on the Maryland Man narrative before Garcia's deeds were brought into light.
When did Kilmore Garcia change his name to Due Process? Was it right around the time Democrats discovered he was MS-13? Last week, they were defending a Maryland man.
The Trump administration abducted and imprisoned a Maryland man.
Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland man.
A Maryland man.
Maryland man.
The growing calls to return the Maryland man.
That Maryland man.
The Maryland man. The wrongful deportation of a Maryland man to El Salvador.
He is, of course, the Maryland man now held in El Salvador.
What happened to the Maryland man? Well, he became MS-13 who gave his wife black eyes, allegedly. That's when Democrats stopped defending MS-13. Now they're defending due process for MS-13.
Imagine writing a header for a news story that says, Trump deports illegal alien from El Salvador to El Salvador. Not exactly a news story, Jesse.
As mentioned before, the media shifted their talking point from the Maryland man to due process. And like a choir, they've all been singing the same tune in order to run their propaganda against Trump. Now, the judge who was harboring that illegal alien and his daughter were arrested over the weekend, thankfully. But in addition to that arrest, another judge who was also arrested for helping an illegal alien avoid arrest from ICE agents.
And to set the stage for you and Sandra, this was truly horrific. This guy was in court being prosecuted by a state prosecutor for domestic violence battery. He had beat up two people, a guy and a girl, hit the guy 30 times, knocked him to the ground, choked him, beat up a woman so badly they both had to go to the hospital. And John, you know, it's so rare for victims to want to cooperate. They wanted to cooperate. They were sitting in the courtroom with the state prosecutor. The judge learns that ICE was outside to get the guy because he had been deported in 2013, came back in our country, commits these crimes, charged with committing these crimes, victims in court. Judge finds out. She goes out in the hallway, screams at the immigration officers. She's furious, visibly shaken, upset, sends them off to talk to the chief judge. She comes back in the courtroom, you're not going to believe this, takes the defendant and the defense attorney back in her chambers, takes them out a private exit and tells them to leave. While a state prosecutor and victims of domestic violence are sitting in the courtroom.
None of this makes any sense to me, like why these people would choose to go down this route. Now, if this illegal immigrant was a mother with a child, I can totally understand the compassionate aspect of this judge's actions. Like, I get that. I still wouldn't agree with it because it's breaking the law, but at least one can understand and comprehend her actions. But that's not the case here. This guy was, number one, already deported back in 2013, which was the Obama years. Somehow he returned unsurprisingly, probably through, the Biden open border policy. But then he beats the snot out of a man and a woman. Like, can you imagine being viciously attacked and attacked by someone, being viciously attacked by someone, and the judge overseeing this case assists the criminal to avoid arrest or deportation? Again, this is absolutely insane, and in my limited knowledge of the law, this should be at the very least, this should fall under obstruction of justice, based on the actions that this judge took. Again, that's just surface level, my observation. I'm not a lawyer. I'm limited on all of on the complexities of the law, but at the very least, it screams out obstruction of justice to me. Now, the example that we just went over is not the focal point again of this video. Rather, it's how the media is spinning it. Just like in Steve Miller's example, the media is writing their own headers in a certain manner.
No precedence for taking a judge in this manner. And I want to be really clear that what Judge Dugan apparently did was what all of us should be doing. And that is standing up for folks in our communities who need support right now against the Trump regime more than ever.
And Bondi's assertion today and her arrest of Judge Dugan was a signal to the judiciary that you had better stay out of our way, because this authoritarian regime is going to continue doing what it's doing.
This is really to show intimidation of judges across the entire country. And quite frankly, this sows doubt into our judicial system. That's something, quite frankly, that this Trump administration would like to do. They don't want people participating in our justice system, and they don't want people participating in our system in general when it comes down to voting.
What's interesting about this situation is a new talking point for the week, right? We went from singing the same tune of Maryland Man to due process to now they're singing the song of the dictatorship tune, right? Now, when the left went after candidate Trump, they consistently touted the phrase, "No one is above the law." Even though it was obvious to many of us, these were bogus charges, bogus raids, illegal spying, and illegitimate raids conducted to prevent Trump from winning a second term. Now that Trump is holding those who are breaking the law accountable, they switched their tune from "no one is above the law" to fear-mongering and likening Trump to a dictator.
He is being treated no better or worse than anyone else. This is not selective prosecution. That this is not somebody who's singled out. That he's being treated just like anyone else. That is what it means to have a rule of law. That is what the Justice Department is really signaling and messaging here, is that everyone will be treated, as Merrick Garland has said, as equally in this country. This is really a great day for America. So there has been a violation here that we know for sure, and it is not the judge. Right, exactly. You don't do it. Even if you thought that there was a ground for doing this, the judgment call that you thought that this is the case to bring, it tells you everything. There is no adult in the room who would have said, "Are you kidding me? Why would you possibly do this?" And the answer is because we want to send a signal to the judiciary, and that's what you shouldn't be doing.
So it's interesting how these guys are going from the optics versus the rule of law. They had no problems with the optics of attempting to indict a former president who was running for office once again. At the moment, the rule of law was absolute, but now bad judges who break the law shouldn't be arrested because it's bad optics. These people are so disgustingly biased.
The idea that no person is above the law is a bedrock principle of American justice.
No man is above the law, no matter what the crime.
And I agree with you. No man is above the law. No person is above the law. No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one's above the law.
No one is above the law.
No man is above the law.
Nobody is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No man is above the law.
He has to be held accountable. He's not above the law.
Yeah, you're right. No one is above the law, especially not judges. I mean, the fact that Democrats are seriously arguing that a judge should just be allowed to help a violent illegal alien evade capture just because she's wearing a robe and because the optics are mean, well, it tells you all that you need to know.
They're such hypocrites. I can't stand it. As you can see in these two images, leftist actor Mark Hamill, most famously known for playing his role as Luke Skywalker, took to social media to echo the dictator message. But his previous post shows he was saying another tune, the same tune, that no one is above the law, once again showing the level of hypocrisy and lack of consistency from the left. As you can see here, also along with Mark Hamill is Democratic shill Harry Sisson, making the same point, which is an indicator that this will more than likely be the narrative for this current week until they find something, new to get outraged over. I think we've done a pretty good job. I think I've done a pretty good job of showing the contrast and exposing the media's lies and bias wherever we can. There's no denying that the leftist media is corrupt and does not follow professional journalistic practices. If we go back to actual definitions, they're more like propagandists versus journalists. And there are many examples we can show, but the most obvious and easiest of them to show is honestly Biden's cognitive decline. It was obvious to anyone who wasn't brainwashed that Biden was slipping. I mean, we showed on 2 separate occasions that he said that he was running for Senate during his 2020 presidential campaign. Then, during Biden's actual 4 years, the decline became more and more obvious as he had multiple slip and falls, and on a regular basis, he was slurring his words. Despite the obvious, though, that nearly everyone could see, the leftist media continued to run cover for Biden, calling him, quote, sharp as a tack. And they tried to explain how energetic and vibrant he was. They flat out lied to the American people versus being actual journalists. Then came the first debate between Trump and Biden, and it became undeniably obvious that Biden's cognitive decline was real, which caused the party to force him out. Now that time has passed and Biden is irrelevant, let's see what the leftist media is saying about that specific moment.
President Biden has spent days locked in intense preparation, surrounded by his closest advisors at Camp David. And our sources are telling us tonight that full mock debates are underway at the podium, under the lights. He's even watching tape to know exactly what he's going to see when he steps up to that lectern. His team shot a video during a walkthrough of the CNN studio. And as I reported while covering him at the White House, when Biden prepares, he does so incredibly intensively.
So just how worried were Biden aides before the former president's disastrous debate last summer? According to Ron Klain, his chief of staff, his concerns could not be overstated. At his first meeting with Biden for debate prep, quote, Klain was startled. He'd never seen Biden so exhausted and so out of it. Biden was unaware of what was happening in his own campaign. Halfway through the session, the president excused himself and went off to sit by the pool. Part about the pool, he went off, this is in the middle of debate prep, went off to the pool and he took a nap.
That's absolutely disgusting. So let's take a montage refresher of how they cover for Biden before the undeniable took place. Right? We're going to see here, just like I mentioned, how they were saying he's sharp as a tack, all of these things to cover for Biden. Let's take a look.
Now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it.
I meet frequently with the president, and every single time I meet with him, he is just fine. How people interpret that is up to them, but I engage with him frequently and alert, sound, does his homework, reads the papers, reads all the read-ahead material, and is very, very engaging in issues of very serious matters of war and peace and life and death. So if the American people are worried about an individual who is, someone who's making decisions of war and peace and has access to, makes the decisions of nuclear weapons and that sort of thing, I think they can rest easy.
The president have the stamina, physically and mentally, do you think, to continue on even after 2024?
God, you're asking me this question. Oh my gosh, he's the president of the United States. You know, I can't even keep up with it. We just got back from New Mexico. We just got back from California. That is not a question that we should be even asking. Just look at the work that he does and look how he's delivering for the American public. Look, that article that we're talking about is hearsay. It's salacious. That's not what we care about.
I know that Joe Biden is not on the ballot. I understand that. But the reason that you are at the top of the ticket is because he dropped out of this race. And so I want to ask you, and it was largely because of that debate performance back in June. You defended him in the days before and in the days after as you were campaigning for another 4 years for President Biden. Can you say that you were honest with the American people about what you saw in those moments with President Biden as you were with him again and again, repeatedly in that time?
Of course. Joe Biden is an extremely accomplished, experienced, and capable in every way that anyone would want if they're president.
I'm about to tell you the truth, and F you if you can't handle the truth. Wow. You know, these types of examples have caused the majority of American people to lose their trust in journalism. Something that I've expressed, I once held in high esteem. You know, CNN Republican Scott Jennings couldn't make the point clearer on why the American people have lost, quote unquote, faith in the media.
What the right wing is taking advantage of is finally the American people saying enough is enough. They're tired of feeling like the mass media screens out one viewpoint versus another in political coverage. They're tired of media institutions favoring one party over another. They're tired of narratives over factual stories. If I had any advice for 60 Minutes or anybody else, it would be just cover the news and try to be fair about it and stop putting your finger on the scale, especially during campaigns.
You're talking about the old mass media myth that you could have this thing that was in the middle. The Walter Cronkite saying, that's the way it is, when it wasn't for many Americans the way it was. When people were pissed off at
people back in those days trusted the media, did they not?
No, they just couldn't be heard because there was no two-way. Now we have the internet.
Look at the Gallup polling. It was here, and now it's here. It's fallen off of a cliff.
Yeah, we do have that Gallup polling about trust in media. Let's be honest, Scott. A lot of this is driven by the rhetoric on your side of the aisle. I mean, it's not.
You think it's driven by the rhetoric and not the performance?
Absolutely.
But my point is this. If you're CBS or any other news outlet, the reason that you have lost trust ought to be obvious to you, and the way to fix it also ought to be obvious to you, and it has nothing to do with Donald Trump and everything to do with the product. Just try to make a better product that appeals to more people, and the way you appeal to more people is by not crapping on half or more than half of the country because of their values and political viewpoint.
There are a number of things I want to take away from this video. The first is the Gallup polling showing the decline of trust in media. Obviously, I myself can attest that I lost trust in the media back in, 2011. I used to watch CNN because I thought they were a respected news station until I caught them in a lie covering for the Obama administration, and there was no correction or retraction. From that point forward, I became skeptical about the media and what they were doing. I became skeptical about their honesty. And it showed to me that there was now a bias that I hadn't seen before. Then it became obvious to many of us, many Americans, once Trump came onto the scene, and the fabrications and the selective manipulation and the just flat out lies that they spread. It just became abundantly obvious that there was a bias, that these people were lying, that these people were not fair and balanced, that they were pulling for one side over the other. And their reach and their power was a lot further than, let's say, somebody like Fox News, because we all know that Fox News came about and they started to push back on Obama, and then you have these I guess conservative news organizations, if you will, but they're far and few in comparison to the left. The left holds, again, they hold the media, they hold Hollywood, they hold academia, right? They hold corporate America. They have influence all over these places where the right just doesn't. The second aspect of the video I'd like to point out is how they don't even want to listen to Scott's reasoning. Rather, Abby shifts to say, oh, it's because of the Republican rhetoric. If I had a moment that I could speak to Abby, I'd assure her and let her know that Scott Jennings' reasoning is 100% accurate. It has nothing to do with rhetoric, but it has to do with everything. It has everything to do with how they report things and how they've been putting their finger on the scale. And they clearly support one side over the other, which is not fair. It's not unbiased, it's biased. This point couldn't be clearer in this next video exchange between Ryan Wilson, who plays who's a star on the Office, and he's being interviewed by Stephanie Rule from MSNBC.
40% of Americans don't trust mainstream media.
We are seeing a huge loss in trust of all of our institutions. It's a huge problem because when you think about democracy and all of these pillars, they need to stand tall, they need to stand strong, and sort of losing that trust is not by accident. It's by design. If you remember when President Trump was running the first time, Steve Bannon once said the goal is to blow the whole thing up. And so I think that you've got mistakes made or things starting to slip, while at the same time there's a concerted effort to destroy the media. The news media is, in my opinion, the last line of defense of holding power accountable, right? And you had a bit of a perfect storm, right? President Trump won, and tons of people were shocked or angry or frustrated, and they're tuning out. And at the same time, you have the Elon Musk media machine, because they want you to leave traditional media and they want you to go to X, which is a bastion of misinformation where there is no fact checking. So it's a perfect storm of people saying, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm tuning out, I'm disconnecting. And then you have a force pushing it. Even in the last 2 weeks, what we need to do is just cover what's happening in America. We have to cover Democrats trying to figure out what their lane is and how they're going to get back on their feet. And we have to simply cover what this White House is doing. Trust is gained in raindrops and it's lost in buckets.
This is where I would push back. When I see this kind of insight and passion being directed at the current administration, and the lack of this kind of insight and passion being directed at the previous administration, where, again, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about left-leaning news media organizations were kind of like, la, 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 everything's fine, look, the environment's, look, the economy's great, la, 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 immigration's not that much of a problem, and really being Cleopatra, queen of denial, thank you, boom.
At some point, this has to be considered cognitive dissonance. And it's clear that these reporters and journalists are not talking to everyday people on this subject, or they're just refusing to listen. Ryan Wilson is accurate in his explanation of the lack of trust in media, which is what Scott Jennings was saying in the prior video, which is my exact view on this matter. You can't tell me there's a peaceful protest happening when a car or a building is being set on fire behind you while you're filming live, and you're not calling it out. You're saying that they're protesters. I'm sorry, that's not what protesters do. That's a riot. You can't sit here and tell me that there's no border crisis when border agents are telling you that there's significant amount of evidence to show that these border crossings are happening. You've got other news stations reporting they're actually showing the migration going from one area to the other. And it's happening. You can't sit here and say that the economy is great while inflation was hitting all-time highs. Meanwhile, you were telling us that there would be no inflation, that inflation was just transitory, when all of that was a lie. The media needs to stop being biased if it wants to survive. Else it will continue to get choked out by the right-wing media and independent content creators such as myself and many others. We have become the voice to push back against their corruption because it's clear they have lost sight of their original duty, which is to report the news and prevent elites and corruption from taking advantage of the American people. So guys, I don't know how long they're going to keep playing this game. I don't know how low they have to sink, but as long as they do, hopefully their ratings will continue to lose, and hopefully it'll continue to, suffocate them so that it pushes them to be honest. Guys, that's my episode for today. Thank you so much for joining. God bless you. God bless Trump. Keep an open mind. Keep your eyes open. Don't let these people deceive you, because the minute they start to deceive you, that's when we start to lose the battle. And I'm so thankful that we have the opportunity to fight back against these corrupt media types. Take care. God bless. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.